Build bolder shoulders with the AD press. What's up, guys? Enkiri here, and today I want to talk about one of my favorite vertical pressing exercises, and that is the AD press. So people see me do this exercise all the time now, and they all want to know, what the heck is an AD press? So we're going to do three things today. First, I'm going to tell you guys really exactly what this exercise is, kind of the specifics of how to perform it or how to set it up. Then I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a backstory on how I really got into training this movement and why I call it what I call it. And then I'm going to tell you guys why I love it so much, right? Why it has become such a staple vertical press for me in my training. So let's get to it. So the simplest way to look at it is that the AD press is essentially a super high incline press, right? So it's not a totally vertical overhead press. It is and it's not an incline bench press. It's a very, very high incline press. Or another way to look at it would be a torso supported seated overhead press with a very slight layback, right? However you want to look at it, but to different sides of the same coin, right? But basically you're performing a vertical press pattern with influences of a high incline bench press involved as well. So it ends up becoming sort of a hybrid pressing pattern between an overhead and a high incline in many ways, which allows you to actually get a lot of the benefits of both of those pressing patterns, both of those types of exercises. Now, personally, I use on my adjustable bench, I set it to, it has a fully upright position. I set mine to one notch below that fully upright position, and that ends up giving me a pad angle of roughly 70 degrees. Now, if you can set your bench to where it's 70, maybe 80 degrees tops, even 80 might be pushing it, but that 70 to 75 range on the pad angle is probably the sweet spot, right? So that angle that I use is, it allows me to lower the bar down to my clavicles. I like to use a pretty high touch point. It allows me to lower to my clavicles without my chin getting in the way of the press, right? Because your head is leaning back against a pad. So when you're performing a free overhead press, you naturally move your chin out of the way, right? And nothing is obstructing that natural movement. If you're on a complete vertical pad and your head is being supported, you can't get your chin out of the way. So you can either choose to bonk yourself in the chin with the bar, or you can choose to use an inefficient bar path. But with this AD press and the slight layback position, we naturally put ourselves into a position where we can maintain optimal, efficient press pattern, bar path, and not hit ourselves in the chin in order to accomplish that. So depending on the design of the bench that you're using, you will want to go one notch below the upright position, like me, or maybe two notches down from that fully upright position at the very most. It just depends kind of on how many adjustment positions that your particular bench has. So you may find that if your bench has a lot of adjustable settings, that one notch doesn't give you quite as much layback as you want, quite enough layback to produce that pressing angle that we're looking for in that roughly 70 to 75 degree range. But you don't want to go too deep, right? And you don't want to go 3 or 4 notches down, because then you're just moving into what I would classify as high incline bench press territory at that point. And then you kind of start to lose that vertical press feel. So what is the story behind this exercise? Now, I originally got the idea for the name of this movement, what I call it, from our friend Leonidas, formerly known as AlphaDestiny. Now, he made a video last year talking about this exact movement and many of its benefits. And it was funny because I had literally, right around that time that video came out, I had just gotten myself an adjustable bench for my home gym just a few weeks prior to him releasing the video. And I bought the bench specifically because I wanted to start incorporating seated, torso-supported overhead pressing into my training routine. I had already been doing standing overhead press, pin overhead press, seated unsupported overhead presses, and I wanted to start doing seated supported overhead presses as well. And what I ended up kind of naturally gravitating towards, what I ended up finding after training the movements for a few weeks, was that angling the pad slightly produced what I felt was an overall more productive pressing pattern. Now, I do still enjoy overhead presses done with a fully upright seat, a fully vertical seat, but I think that in general, the AD press is actually a better staple pressing movement compared to those fully upright presses. So anyway, I had just sort of inadvertently discovered this exercise a few weeks prior, and then Alex made that video about it, and he was calling it the Anterior Deltoid Press specifically because of the extra stretch that you are able to get on the anterior deltoids due to the slight pressing angle that you're pressing from. Now, I personally actually find that I get more upper chest engagement on the AD press than I do anterior deltoid engagement. And I want to get to the differences as to why that may be in just a minute. But basically, Alex was calling it an anterior deltoid press, and he was the one who kind of popularized that movement, right? He brought it out into the forefront for you guys. So after that, I just started, I abbreviated it to AD press in my training journal. And then I kind of realized later it was both, the AD could be both anterior deltoid press or it could be AlphaDestiny Press. And so in all the programs that I write in my own journal and in all the programs that I write now, I call it the AD Press, basically as an homage to AlphaDestiny, his retired moniker. So it is the anterior deltoid press or it's the AlphaDestiny Press, or really it is both of those things. And that's kind of the point. It's really just to honor the roots of our friend Alex there for a bit. I know that he's moved on from that name and kind of the ideologies that are associated with it, but I thought it was pretty cool to throw a little bit of respect in that way. So that's what I call it now, and that's kind of the backstory behind the exercise for me. So what makes this movement so great? There are multiple reasons, but for one thing, and this is the major point touched on by Alex in his video, the stability aspects that are present here. With that torso support, you're able to get a little bit more weight on the bar, and you're able to really push the prime movers, the delts, the triceps, the upper chest, to greater levels of fatigue and stimulation, because none of the stabilizing musculature ends up becoming a limiting factor, as it often does with standing or torso unsupported overhead presses. Further, there's also that hybrid pressing action to consider. Now, you guys know that I'm a really big fan of vertical pressing exercises, right? I vastly prefer pressing overhead to most flat or bench pressing variations, aka horizontal presses. It's just more fun to me, right? And I find that it's more productive in my training because of that, because it's more fun, because I enjoy it more, and because I think that a big overhead press is cooler than a big bench press. And that's just me. You guys are free to have your own opinions, but being an overhead press enthusiast, I was searching for a lot of different staple variations that I could use, that I could train to continually push my OHP up while also keeping things fun and interesting in my training and building big, strong shoulders in the process, right? And with the AD press, I get that hybrid pressing action. So I get to satisfy my craving for pressing overhead and really smashing and trashing my shoulders. But in the process of this, I also get a great deal of upper chest stimulation and engagement as well while I'm training. And now while I'm training, doing something that I actually enjoy doing. Now I'm simultaneously working both the vertical press muscles and to an extent also the horizontal pressing muscles, which is important for somebody like me because I'm otherwise more likely to potentially neglect those horizontal pressing muscles. And so with this movement, I'm able to kind of kill two birds with one stone. So then why the differences in perceived muscular engagement on this exercise, where Alex feels that his anterior deltoids are being worked to a greater extent, and I feel that my upper chest is being worked to a greater extent. Now, I will preface this section by saying that Alex's assessment of the mechanics and the anatomy of the movement is accurate, but by having the torso laid back slightly, the anterior deltoids do get placed under a greater stretch at the bottom of the movement compared to upright overhead presses, because the elbows are able to actually move back behind the torso slightly while under load, which can't happen when the torso is fully upright. So the anterior deltoids are working really, really hard. There's no way around that, and that's a good thing. But with somebody like me, who's quite shoulder dominant, as opposed to chest dominant, an exercise like this with that little bit of layback in the torso really forces me to learn how to engage the chest and push through with the upper chest, which is probably one of my biggest relative weaknesses. And so I can actually use this as weak point training in a way for my overhead press, which I was starting to think might actually be being held back by my lack of upper chest strength. And I came to that conclusion by how weak I was on incline pressing variations as compared to overhead pressing variations. Now, based on the differences in our relative strengths and weaknesses, I would postulate that Alex doesn't feel this to nearly the same extent as I do when he performs the AD press, right? I would postulate that his upper chest doesn't feel like nearly as much of a limiting factor as compared to his shoulders when he's doing the AD press, simply because he's far less shoulder dominant than I am, and his chest is a lot stronger than mine. So when he's performing the movement, the deltoids are likely the relative weak point, whereas when I'm performing the movement, the chest is likely the relative weak point. So how you perceive the exercise is going to come down to relative strengths and weaknesses, as well as probably anthropometry to an extent. Anyway, I think that covers it for today, guys. I really just wanted to give this exercise a little bit of spotlight, highlight it a little bit, because I think that it's an awesome movement. It's super productive. It's just as valuable as bench pressing, if not more so. And so I really want these high incline and these vertical pressing movements to start to become just as popular again as the horizontal and flat presses are, man. You know, back in the day, how much can you press meant how much can you press overhead, not how much can you press off your chest. The OHP used to be the standard, and I want to get the industry back to those good old days and help you guys build some bolder shoulders in the process. Check out EnkiriEliteFitness.com for online coaching and training programs. Smash the like button, leave me some love in the comments, and keep training hard. I will catch you guys next time.